Welcome back to more managerial accounting. You spend a lot of time early on in the book classifying cost, and as you're reading the book and you're working the problems, you may think, well, why are we wasting all this time just kind of classifying a cost? Why don't we just take a total cost and be done with it? Well, the whole reason is management. We can't manage anything if we don't know what the number is. So we try to break down the cost in a way that we can manage them a little bit better. So in this particular problem, we're looking at direct materials and direct labor. That's two of the biggest parts that make up a product cost. The third would be overhead and all the things that get thrown into that. So direct materials are those items that are directly related to making the product, the materials that go into it. And direct labor would be the labor that goes directly into making that product. So let's jump right into it here. The problem says we have a company that makes aluminum canoes. Company's June 2013 cost for material and labor are shown below. All we have to do is calculate the direct material cost for June and the direct labor for June. So it's really nothing more than just picking out what is and what isn't direct labor and direct materials. So as we go through there, I'm just going to kind of go through one by one, and we're going to decide whether or not it's a direct material and direct labor. If it is, we're going to go ahead and add them to our pot here. So janitorial supplies under material cost are $1,800. And that's not an item that we can really trace directly to the product from a material standpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a big old X next to that one. We're not going to include that in direct material. Chrome rivets to assemble the canoes. Now that's a different story. That's a pretty costly item that we probably can trace to the canoe. So I'm going to go ahead and put a star. We're going to include that in our direct materials. Okay. The next one is a sealant, 1,230. Now that's obviously an item that's going to be directly related to the building of that canoe. However, that's not an item that's going to be easily traced back to that canoe. Just a couple of globs of sealant, that's not going to be worth our time to trace it back to the canoe. So we're going to say that that's not going to be included in direct material. We're instead going to allocate that on a per unit basis to our product, but we're not going to include it in direct material. Aluminum, well, obviously we can figure out how much of that goes into every canoe. So we're going to include that in our direct material. So I'm going to add that in there, 1,683,000. And I'm going to add those two guys together. My total direct material on these canoes is going to be 1,695,510. That would be the answer for that part A. Okay. Part B wants to know about direct labor. The exact same concept that we're talking about with direct material. We're trying to find the labor that is directly attributable to the making of that product. Janitorial wages, once again, that's not going to cut it. We're going to put a big red X next to that one. We're not counting that into our direct labor. Aluminum cutters, the people that actually take the aluminum and cut it so we can make the canoe, we're going to include that. That is direct labor that we can directly trace to our product. So 56,160 in wages is going to go under direct labor. Salespeople salary, it's an important job, but it's not going to be part of our direct labor. And then we have welders. Obviously, they're going to be involved in making that final product of the canoe. So I'm going to put a green star next to that, and we're going to go ahead and include that into our direct labor amount. And then finally, the factory supervisor, not going to be included in direct labor. A lot of times what happens in a factory is you have multiple product lines going on, and it's hard to tie their salary to any one given product. So a lot of times that's not going to be included in your direct labor. So we only have two amounts for direct labor. We're going to add those together, and we get a total. And that's going to be our amount for part B that we would put down for direct labor. So the biggest part is just separating your amounts that don't go into direct material and labor out from the ones that do. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, give me a call, and try to